Welcome to SJB Radio. I'm your host, Reinaldo, and I'm here with Mr. Artigas, Mr. Crossan, and Vin, and we're here to talk about our bracketology for the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Championship. So, how's everybody doing?
I'm doing good.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm doing really well, actually. I'm very excited about doing this. This is my third year, and I still haven't done anything successful yet.
I don't think this is the year he's going to start either, based on what I saw in his bracket.
well, now that we got that out of the way, introductions out of the way, where should we start first, guys? Let's start with the East, right? Am I wrong? No? Let's start with the East. Why not? Yeah, let's start with the East. All right. So, who do you guys have going in the first game, North Carolina or FGSU or Fair Dickinson?
Well, I don't think a 16 seed has ever beaten a number 1 seed in the tournament, so I went with UNC here.
Okay.
Was there ever a time that happened?
I think so, yeah.
Never.
How long?
Never happened.
Never happened? I thought North Carolina lost.
Yeah, I thought that did happen.
I'm pretty sure that a 2 has lost to a 15, but a 1 has never lost to a 16.
I think we're going to have to Google that before the show.
Let's Google it.
Yeah.
Well, I think North Carolina will definitely blow through that first game. And does it really matter if they meet FGCU? What is that, a college? Fairly Ridiculous is also a college, I guess, yes. Anybody going to Fairleigh Dickinson? It's a great school.
So do you see FGU or Fairleigh Dickinson? I know it really doesn't matter at the end, but who do you see winning that one?
You know, I think
who do you see winning that one?
I think Fairleigh Dickinson will.
Yeah, I'll go with the hometown team also, Fairleigh Dickinson, right in New Jersey, so I'll go with them.
Might as well. Okay. Now for the next one, USC, known for their football, but this is basketball, against Providence, 8 versus 9. Who do you see for this one, guys?
I like the way Providence played towards the end of the season. I think that they're a strong team offensively. USC, didn't really see them play very much this year, but I agree. I don't think there's much to that program right now. They played in a weaker program this year, so I think Providence wins that game.
I agree with Mr. Crossan. I think Providence wins that game. They seem to be peaking right about now. Been playing very well recently. I haven't seen much or heard much of USC this year, so I'm going to go Providence on that one.
I'm probably going to go with Providence as well. What about you, Reinaldo?
Okay, I'm not too big into college basketball. I haven't even finished my bracket, to be honest with you. Honestly, I really haven't even started it. But I'll go with Providence. They seem like a good team, you know. But let's move on to the next one. Indiana and Chattanooga. That's Tennessee. Am I right?
Chattanooga.
Yeah, Tennessee. Yep. I went with Indiana in this one. The Hoosiers have been playing great basketball all year. Hit a little bit of a speed bump in conference tournament, but they were the top-ranked team in their conference during the regular season. I think they blow through Chattanooga.
Let's face it, the best thing that ever came out of Chattanooga was the Chattanooga Choo-Choo. Indiana, I agree, Matt. They did hit a bump going into that conference tournament. They are going to be a strong team. They could get through, but they'll probably likely face Kentucky in the next round. So this is an important game for them to win to have any chance against Kentucky.
I agree. I feel like I personally feel that we were talking about Kentucky or Stony Brook. I personally see Kentucky definitely beating Stony Brook. I mean, even though that Stony Brook has a better record right now, Kentucky has had the experience. They have definitely had the experience. They had a perfect regular season last year, and they lost in the Final Four. So I definitely think that a team like Kentucky is going to beat out, even though it's hometown team, Stony Brook.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Kentucky's moving on. What about you, Mr. A?
I don't see any way Stony Brook beats Kentucky this year. That sets up a really interesting second-round game between Indiana and Kentucky, so I'm excited to see that one.
That would be a very interesting game to see. Wouldn't it be like it would absolutely be a shock to see Stony Brook beat Kentucky. Am I wrong?
Absolutely.
Right?
Exactly.
I think Stony Brook has one of those super colliders out there. Maybe if they got all the players from Kentucky in the super collider, you know, there's a very real possibility they'd be moving on.
Okay. Notre Dame and Michigan, or Tulsa. Yeah.
Do you see Michigan or Tulsa winning?
Be honest with you, I think Notre Dame. That's what I'm going with.
Well, I think Michigan will win the playing game, and they could present a little bit of a challenge to Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't really defend too well. Michigan likes to throw it up from beyond the arc, so I'm going to take the upset in this one and say Michigan wins the playing game and then beats Notre Dame in the first round.
Wow, that's a bit of a very bold prediction there. I see Michigan win in the first 4 game against Tulsa, and I personally don't see Michigan having a chance against Notre Dame. I mean, that's just me. I mean, I could very well be wrong. I've been wrong with this before, and I would not be surprised if I was wrong again.
Well, with apologies to Eric Clapton, I'll be living on Tulsa time. I do think they get through and play Notre Dame. Of course, that's about as far as they'll go. Notre Dame will beat them, and I think they will be facing West Virginia in the next round.
Speaking of West Virginia, can they beat SF Austin?
Stephen F. Austin seems to be one of those mid-majors that hangs around that 13, 14 seed every year in the tournament. And every year people seem to like to build them up as one of those sleeper upset picks, but I don't see it this year. I think West Virginia beats them in the first round pretty handily.
I personally feel like maybe SF Austin will have a chance. I mean, as you can see here, I know that they were probably in a weaker conference because I don't really know that much about college basketball, but what I'm assuming is that, for what I've known, West Virginia has had the better record for when it comes to basketball, but something tells me that SF Austin might be able to get a bit of a step up. And will they beat Notre Dame, though, if it does happen, or Michigan or Tulsa? Now that I'm thinking about it, no, I don't see that happening. But I do see them possibly being good in the first round. Second round, no, I see them probably getting shredded.
You know what I see? I see Pittsburgh beating Wisconsin.
I see Pittsburgh beating Wisconsin also. I think we have a Wisconsin team here. It was a great team last year, lost a lot of guys to graduation. I think they need another year before they can make a deep run into the tournament.
Do you agree?
I think that's going to be one of those upset games. Conventional wisdom says that, yes, Wisconsin lost a lot of their players from last year. They shouldn't really move too far in this tournament, but I just see this as one of my 2 major upsets in the first round.
I do see Pittsburgh beating Wisconsin as well, and I do see them moving on to the second round, third semifinals. Not too sure, but I definitely see second round for them. I possibly see that Wisconsin's probably going to choke, just like they did in the finals last year.
Whoa.
Bold statement.
Yeah, bold statement. Low blow there.
Yeah.
Xavier and Weber State. I think Xavier's going. To be honest with you, that's who I chose to go to the Final Four.
I wouldn't say Final Four for Xavier, but I do like them to beat Weber State. Xavier's played really well all year. They knocked out Villanova from the top spot in the country in the polls a couple of weeks back. They've played great basketball this year, and I think they'll get through the first round beating Weber.
Well, I didn't realize it, but Weber State is not named after Karen Weber from the athletic department. In any event, I'm going to take Xavier in that game. I like Xavier's athleticism, and I think that they will definitely win that game.
I agree. I mean, Xavier, from the looks of it, has been doing very good basketball, and I personally have them in the Final 8. I don't see them in the Final 4, but I definitely see them in one of the Final 8 teams. So I definitely see them probably blowing out Weber State because, just be real, who's ever heard of Weber State before? Have you, Mr. Crossan?
No, like I said, I didn't realize it wasn't named after Mrs. Weber from the athletic office.
That's true.
So, as a whole in the East, who do you think goes to the Final Four?
Out of the East, I have West Virginia beating Kentucky to get to the Final Four. North Carolina has a great team. I'm going to get in trouble at home for saying they're going to get knocked off. I have a sister-in-law who works there. But their inconsistency, I think, makes them a little bit vulnerable. And it's hard not to bet on Calipari and Kentucky. West Virginia's played great basketball all year. I have them beating Xavier to face Kentucky in the Elite Eight, and West Virginia moving on to the Final Four from the East.
I have Kentucky beating out Xavier, who I predict that Kentucky is going to beat out North Carolina very, very barely, and then I see them probably beating out Xavier in a very big upset. But unfortunately for them, I don't see them going to the championship. That's just me. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Crossan?
Well, I got to tell you, I think one of the most exciting games of this tournament could be the one on March 25th when North Carolina plays Kentucky. This could be a game that goes into double or even triple overtime. That's how well matched these two teams are. I think Kentucky comes out on top because of the coaching. I do think the Calipari is a better coach than Roy Williams, and I think Kentucky makes it all the way through to the semifinals, and will be playing for a chance to play in the final.
It should be fun.
Absolutely.
Now, as we finish the East, let's move our way into the Midwest. Virginia and Hampton. Who do you got there? I obviously Virginia for me. Obviously.
Just very quickly, Virginia all the way. Hampton has no chance in this game.
I will wash Principal Doherty's car if Hampton beats Virginia. That's how sure I am that Virginia will win.
Just once? I think if Hampton beats Virginia, you might have to do it for a full week.
All right, Reinaldo. If Hampton beats Virginia, me and you have to wash Principal Doherty's car 3 times before the end of school.
All right, no problem. I'll do that. I'll take that bet.
Virginia. Enough said.
How about, can we add my car to that as well?
Might as well. If it's going to be that much of an upset, then I think it goes for a challenge.
Bet taken, right, Reinaldo?
Yep, absolutely. Let's move on to Texas Tech and Butler.
I've seen a little bit of Texas Tech this year. I think they're a little bit overrated personally. I don't really see a complete team there. Butler just seems to have, I know they lost the coach a couple years back, but they just seem to be one of those teams who nobody ever really pays much attention to, and they always seem to find a way to get themselves deep into the tournament. So I went Butler here.
I think that Butler is going to beat Texas Tech again. Well, not again. I definitely see them beating Texas Tech in the first round and advancing to who I think will most likely Virginia. And I say most likely there because, you could have a car that you need to wash, Reinaldo. That means you too, Mr. Crossan.
LOL. Well, I think Butler's going to win. Butler's got a great program. They're well coached. They have always been a balanced team at the tournament, and I see Butler beating Texas Tech.
Okay, the next one is Purdue versus Little Rock. Who do you see with that one, Reinaldo?
To be honest with you, just by the look of Little Rock's record, I feel like they might go far in the Midwest. So I'm gonna go with Little Rock.
See, this is one of those games that it kind of throws you through a loop. It seems like every year a 12 seed beats a 5, and Ronaldo's right. Little Rock has played really well all year. I'm not completely sold on Purdue, so I don't want to say Little Rock will win. I took Purdue here, but let's just say that if Little Rock did win this game, it wouldn't shock me.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I do think that Little Rock is going to win, and I actually see them in the Sweet. Is it called the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
I see them in the Sweet 16. What about you, Mr. Crossan?
No, I think this game is Purdue's to lose. They looked well yesterday. They played well in their conference tournament, and I think that they will breeze past Little Rock.
Should be interesting.
It should be very interesting. Now, as we move past Purdue and Little Rock, let's move on to Iowa State and Iona. I think this is going to be a tough game for me, but I think I'm going to go with Iowa State.
I've heard a lot of I's in in your words. Iowa State, Iona. I think that it should go here. I don't know. I just find that kind of interesting. In all honesty, I actually kind of feel like Iowa State. I feel like they're a bit overrated. So I personally feel like Iona's going to go a step above I really do. But I don't see them beating Purdue or Little Rock, but that's just me.
You know, this is one of those games where I'm not very familiar with either team. Iona, I guess, is a local school, but if I'm coming at this from the standpoint where I really don't understand these teams too well, Iowa State definitely comes from a stronger conference than Iona. And as a result of that, plus they're the 4th seed, I'm going to take Iowa State.
So Iowa State is one of those teams to me that seems like they always rank them high and then they always bow out of the tournament early. I'm a little biased here as I am an Iona graduate. So I went Iona. They have one of the best players in the country in A.J. English, estimated to be a first-round draft pick in this upcoming NBA draft. Great player. I've been lucky enough to see a couple of Iona games this year, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people and win this game.
Absolutely, I agree. Now, moving into like two big name schools, Seton Hall and Gonzaga. From what I've watched when it comes to the tournament from the NCAA tournament, I've always seen Gonzaga play very well. I remember Jimmy Buckets playing for Gonzaga. That's as far back as I'll go with college basketball. But I'm gonna take Gonzaga over Seton Hall.
I went Gonzaga in this game also. I'm somewhat familiar with some of the Seton Hall players. When I worked at Holy Cross, we would see a lot of those kids in our league come into the building. You know, Isaiah Whitehead's a fantastic point guard. Kadeen Carrington is a great swing player, but I think Seton Hall's a little bit young, a little bit immature, a little bit inconsistent. And again, Gonzaga is very similar to Butler. Seems to be one of those programs that just finds a way to win when it comes to tournament time. So I went Gonzaga on this one also.
You know, it's interesting. Seton Hall is having a very similar season that Connecticut had back in 2014, where Connecticut went to the Big East tournament, not being the favored, not really with a lot of prospects, and they wound up going on to win the whole tournament. That being said, I do think Seton Hall might be a little bit immature, a little young right now, whereas that Connecticut team was a lot of veteran players. On top of which, Gonzaga is one of my favorite college programs of all time. Some great basketball players have played there over the years. I love saying the word Gonzaga, you know. So I'm going with the Zags to win this game. I see the Zags going all the way to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
You know, I wasn't thinking about it at first because, you know, I actually never even heard of Gonzaga before. I mean, I've heard of the term Zags, but like I said, I don't really know much about college basketball
It's a Jesuit school.
Jesuit.
Is it really?
Interesting. Never knew that.
Very interesting.
But I think I might take Seton Hall in this one. However, I do see the next team, the team that I think is going to win, the one that they're going to go against in Denver. I actually see them possibly going to the next one, and that brings us to our next game, Utah and Fresno State. I think Utah's played some. From my understanding, Utah has been playing some really good basketball. As you can see, they're the number 3 seed, and I think they probably deserve that seed. And Fresno State, I mean, I haven't heard much about Fresno State, but they could surprise. However, I don't see Fresno State pulling up a surprise. Instead, I see Utah winning.
Before we continue on to Utah and Fresno State, I made a mistake about Jimmy Buckets on Gonzaga. I meant Doug McDermott playing for Gonzaga. No, he didn't play for Doug McDermott.
What is this? Is this PTY? Is this PTY where we got to correct our mistakes now?
Play? Oh, Creighton. That's who I'm thinking of. Okay, then. All right. Like I said, I don't know much about college basketball, and I just proved my point there. So I'm going Utah. All right.
I went Utah here also. I think Fresno's a little over their head. They're coming out of a very weak Mountain West Conference, upsetting San Diego State in the final to get the automatic bid. I don't think they're a team that's going to make much noise this time around.
Reinaldo, just for your information, one of the greatest basketball players in NBA history came out Gonzaga, Mr. John Stockton. Oh, wow. Yes. I like Utah coming out of that game as well, beating Fresno State. Although I have Zags going all the way to the Elite Eight on that side, I think that the Gonzaga-Utah game on March 19th will be like the Kentucky game I was talking about before, March 25th, be one of the best games in the tournament.
Okay, absolutely. I absolutely agree.
We shall see.
We will. And now on to Dayton and Syracuse. Now, Syracuse, was it last season that they went like they had like a phenomenal season?
Bad proposed
Yeah, bad postseason play, but they had a great regular season last year. Now, the way Dayton's record is and Syracuse's record is, I'm going to go with Dayton just because of their record, and I feel like they've played great basketball for their record, for the way their record is. So I'm going to say Dayton.
I remember last year, Dayton, weren't they part of the first four, those things? They were
Last four in.
Yeah, first four from last year.
I don't recall that, but you could be right.
But I know that they definitely went further than I anticipated. So I personally feel like they're going to probably use that momentum from last year and probably move their way towards beating Syracuse, I mean, aside from maybe basketball, I mean, do they really have any other good sports?
I don't know
Lacrosse.
much. Lacrosse, hockey.
Football.
Pretty
much all of them.
I wouldn't say football.
Yeah.
So they're basically well-rounded?
Jim Brown went to Syracuse.
He did.
Ah, interesting. I never knew that.
Carmelo Anthony.
You're right. They're not very good in sports. Alrighty, you know what? Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Dayton definitely will win this game. Syracuse, their record at 19-13 is kind of deceiving. They play in a very, very tough conference now. Unlike, the Big East is still a very tough conference, but they play in a conference where, the top 4 or 5 teams will generally make it into the tournament. I just don't think Syracuse is going to have the legs to beat Dayton this year. I think Dayton moves on, and they'll be losing to Michigan State in the next round. Because honestly, I have no idea where Middle Tennessee is.
It's in the middle of Tennessee.
Middle of Tennessee.
I agree that Dayton will beat Syracuse. I think there's a lot of ESPN analysts who didn't even think Syracuse belonged in the field this year. I think a lot of people question if they should really be there, but I think Dayton wins that game by double digits.
I agree. Now, next one, Michigan State, who had a surprise run to the Final Four last year before they kind of got demolished by Duke, goes against, well, as we said before, the middle of Tennessee. No question, I see Michigan State winning this one without question. What about you, Mr. Crossan?
Yeah, there's no way that Michigan State's going to lose that game. I mean, if they were playing like upper Tennessee instead of just middle Tennessee, it might be a different outcome.
Tom Izzo always gets his teams at least 2-3 rounds deep in this. Michigan State wins this game easily.
Okay, now like we did for the East and we will do for the Midwest, who do we see as a whole in the Midwest going to the Final Four?
I like Virginia to come out of that bracket. I think that they're the strongest team in that bracket. They were consistently playing well this year. They spent some time at number 1. And I like their chances. I see them actually playing in the final game.
I have Michigan State coming out of the Midwest. I think in a field like this, where I think everybody pretty much agrees it's pretty wide open this year, the best coached teams have a big advantage, and I'd be hard-pressed to find a better college basketball coach than Tom Izzo.
In that bracket, absolutely. Tom Izzo's the best coach there.
I see Virginia making it, and I actually see them beating Utah. Yes, I actually see Utah beating Michigan State in the Sweet 16. That's a bold prediction on my part, considering how, and not really that bold, considering how Michigan State's 2 and Utah's a 3, but I've heard more from Michigan State this year. I feel like Utah, because they're, would you say that Utah is a bigger basketball state than Michigan? I mean, Michigan has the Pistons, but Utah has the Jazz, and the Jazz is really the only
In terms of
team.
Consistency and longevity, Michigan has produced some of the best programs in the history of college basketball. Utah's had a couple of flashes in the pan, but if you're talking about basketball dynasties, it's Michigan State.
Okay, and now that brings us through our first half of the NCAA tournament, and we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to SJB Radio. I'm your host, Reinaldo, and I'm here with Mr. Artigas, Mr. Crossan, and Vin, and we're going to continue with our NCAA tournament brackets. Let's move our way back into it. Let's get into the South. Kansas versus Austin P. And without a doubt, Kansas wins that game, no question.
Is it pronounced P or P A?
I think it's
P.
Yeah, I was going to say
I thought it was P.
Paye?
Paye.
Paye.
Paye. No,
We're having an
Paella.
we're having an awfully lot of discussion about a school that's going to be in the tournament for 2 hours. Kansas will win this game big. I will paint Mr. Crossan's house if Kansas loses this game to Austin P. So I'll try to one up you there. You were going to wash Miss Doherty's car. I will paint your house if Kansas loses.
I'm going to
this
make
game.
it tougher for you, Matt. I'm going to let Mrs. Doherty pick out. I'm going to let Principal Doherty pick out the colors for that paint too.
I just noticed something. Outside of the first 4 teams with Holy Cross, Austin Paye, whatever its name is,
Paella.
has the worst record in this entire tournament. Yeah, it does. I mean, if they were to lose one of their wins, one of the games that they won, they would have had a losing record. And like I said, the only other team that has a worse record is Holy Cross, which is 14-19. They have more losses than they do wins. I mean, I'm surprised that they even make it to the tournament.
There you go. So who do you like in that game?
Definitely Kansas. I mean, there's without question. I mean, we can talk about how funny Austin Paye or Paella, whatever its name is, but I mean, come on. Who would you rather have, a team that people know by name as the Kansas Jayhawks, or a team with a name that we can't even truly pronounce?
All right, let's move on.
Colorado and Connecticut. Now, from what I can honestly say I've seen Colorado play more than I've seen any other team in college basketball. And I feel that Colorado is a well-rounded off team. They have a very good big man. I don't know his name, but he's a very well-rounded player. They have good defense. I feel like they score consistently. I feel like they've played consistently. Although their record doesn't prove to show it, I feel like they could have won more games than they have. And I'm going to go with Colorado in this.
I feel like Reinaldo is picking Colorado to win the whole thing here. I learned a long time ago to never bet against the Huskies, especially that season with Napier and that magical run that they made as like a 9 seed to the NCAA tournament final where they won. So I went UConn here just based on being burned before.
Yeah, I don't like either one of these teams. I don't think they've been that great this year, but I think you're right, Matt. I think you never bet against UConn in this situation. I see Connecticut moving on.
Vin?
I was originally thinking that Colorado, but then I just realized it's Connecticut. I mean, they have a really, really, really well-known basketball program. Sure, I understand it's mainly the girls' basketball that they're mainly well-known for, but they got to at least have some talent for boys' basketball. I mean, I could be wrong.
They do. They've had very, very good talent at UConn. Shabazz Napier, Kemba Walker, not sure about anybody else, but they've had good players come out of UConn.
They've had great teams at UConn also. It's one of the most decorated men's basketball program in the NCAA. I mean,
certainly for the last 25, 30 years, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Would you say that Connecticut is the college basketball equivalent of the Spurs because they've made the playoffs so many times?
No,
I'm not. Yeah,
comparison.
No.
I think they're a steady and a successful program, but I wouldn't necessarily compare them on that basis to the Spurs.
I can definitely say I can see UConn beating the Knicks at this point. You know that's an absolute fact.
Ronaldo, I could see the St. John the Baptist Cougars beating the Knicks.
It could be worse. The 76ers.
The girls program.
That could be a little bit rude. Not
to say that the girls program is bad, but
no. In all fairness,
you meant that in all goodness.
Trust me, there's far worse teams than the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks have been bad recently, but trust me, the 76ers finally had their first win in like a month or two. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they can really, really beat the 76ers. I mean, the 76ers aren't worth anything.
Let's get back on track, guys.
Yeah, let's get back to it. Maryland and South Dakota. I'm gonna go with Maryland here. No, actually, South Dakota.
I'm surprised because I actually went with the Jackrabbits. That's right, San Diego State Jackrabbits in this game. Also, senior heavy team playing great basketball. I've seen them play once. Might not be enough to make a comparison, but I'm not a huge fan of this Maryland team. I think they're very inconsistent. They have some great talent. They don't play well together. I think South Dakota's primed for an upset here.
I personally feel like South Dakota will probably have an upset, and I actually see them in the Sweet 16. I really do mean it. I really think that they could probably show people, like, hey, we're worth more. We can actually do more, and I just see that with South Dakota State, and that could really mean a lot for a state that most people don't even really live in.
Well, you know what? There's a reason that Maryland's ranked number 5. Again, they had a fairly successful record coming out of one of the toughest conferences in the country. I like their coach an awful lot. I think he does a great job with that program. He's really put that program back on the map. South Dakota will give them a good game, but Maryland wins this one. Next up, we got California and Hawaii. California, I like them coming out of this game. You know, I don't have much of an opinion on either one of these teams, but I think looking at them, I think California will come out of that.
I think Cal wins this game. They have 2 incredible freshman players, both projected to be in the top 15 picks in the NBA draft coming up. So I went Cal here. Interestingly enough, my daughter has Hawaii. She's 3 years old. When she heard the name Rainbow Warriors, she picked them to go to the Final Four. So let's see what happens with that one.
Wait, really called the Rainbow Warriors?
That's correct.
Interesting.
So what do you think there, Reinaldo?
I'm gonna say California coming out of that game. Yeah.
California, no question.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Arizona or Vanderbilt against Wichita State.
Well,
so I chose Wichita out of all these teams, and I think Wichita is gonna go through to the Final Four.
Well, I think whoever wins that playing game will then beat Arizona. I don't like this Arizona team. It's another team that I think has a lot of talent, but again, they don't play well together. The Pac-10 as a conference this year I thought was a little bit overrated, and I just don't see this Arizona team making much noise this March.
Well, this might come as a bit of a shocker to you. Get it? Shocker? Wichita?
Wichita, yeah.
I think that they will win their playing game, but I think Arizona is overall a much more athletic team than they are, and I see Arizona winning that game.
I agree. Arizona will beat the Shockers, which I don't know why they're called the Shockers. I mean, isn't it just a bale of hay that their mascot is? I mean,
Yes, but a Boilermaker just fixes boilers.
That's true. So I guess that brings us to our next game, Miami versus Buffalo, and I know that I'm a very big football person, and I know that back then in like the 80s and the 90s, Miami and Buffalo had a huge rivalry. Not so much now because they're now the epitome of mediocrity, but back then it was very huge. So I personally see Miami. They have a really well-known sports program, and I see them propelling against Buffalo. What about you?
Yep, Miami all the way.
Miami is actually coached by the same guy that took George Mason to the Final Four a couple of years ago. Great guy, very inspirational coach. He's got a lot of talent around him right now. I think Miami will win that game.
I agree. Miami wins this game, pretty much pulling away at the end. I don't think they'll have much trouble in this first-round matchup.
Which then brings us to Iowa and Temple. I said this before. Iowa and Temple would be, for me, is going to be a good game, but I do see Temple coming out of there with a win.
Yeah, Iowa's one of those teams that kind of peaked in January and tanked the rest of the season. They really weren't playing good basketball coming down the stretch. Didn't stick around in their conference tournament very long. Temple's a very good team, and I'll go local and I'll take Temple also.
I'm gonna go with Iowa. I just see it happening. I mean, I I mean, either way, I don't see either of these two teams making it to the Sweet 16. I mean, let's be real here.
Well, it's interesting. I actually initially, when I filled up my bracket the first time, I had Iowa going all the way to the Final Four. And then I looked at it again, and I was thinking about how they did play in their conference tournament recently. And they do look like they're just fizzling out. I like Iowa to win that game, but I don't really see them going much further. I do think they will upset Miami, but Iowa at one time I think was a team that a lot of people would have thought would have been in the Final Four, maybe even a team that could win it all, but not this year.
Which then brings us into our next games, Villanova versus UNC Asheville. Without a doubt, no question, Villanova just goes straight over UNC Asheville. No question.
Without question. I mean, there's not really much to say here. I mean, Villanova is a very well-known basketball team, college basketball team. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I remember that Robert Morris, I know that was with the West, but I remember Robert Morris was in the basketball championship bracket, and guess what? They're not in it this year because they're one of those 16 seed, 15 seed teams, and guess what happened with them? They got blown out, and I see the same thing with Villanova and UNC Asheville.
Jay Wright, the coach of Villanova, is probably one of the greatest regular season coaches in college basketball. Villanova is always very tough to beat during the course of the year. But he's had a tough time winning games in the tournament, and I think he'll win this game, but I think that's about as far as he goes.
I actually agree with Mr. Crossan. I have Villanova winning this game. Just like Mr. Crossan said, Villanova doesn't seem to be able to put it all together when it comes tournament time, with the exception of that 2009 run they made to the national championship game. I have Villanova beating UNC Asheville to set up the All-Philadelphia matchup in the second round with Temple and Villanova, but I have the Owls upsetting them in the round of 32. So I don't see a very long tournament life for Villanova this year.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, now, guys.
Wait. As the South as a whole, who do we see going to the Final Four?
That's what I was just going to say.
Oh, okay. All right, my bad.
I personally see Kansas. I mean, without a question. I mean, Kansas has the best record in the entire bracket, and I really do think that Kansas has a really good shot of winning the whole thing. And what about you, Mr. Crossan? Do you see them?
As I was saying before, I really was initially liking Iowa to go very far in this tournament, and as I'm looking at my bracket, you can see where I've scratched out Iowa's name in the South Final, where I thought they would play Kansas. And the big game is going to be Miami-Iowa in the round of 16, and I think Miami wins that. They lose to Kansas. Kansas goes on to the Final Four.
Kansas over Cal, Miami over Temple. Kansas beats Miami to go to the Final Four.
Okay, final one of the conferences. It's the West bracket. We were in the Midwest now, and then we were in the South, and now we're back to the West, except more so West. Oregon versus Holy Cross / Southern. First off, who do you see? Holy Cross, who I said has the only losing record, or Southern?
I don't think it really matters. I'm taking Holy Cross, and I think Oregon wins that game going away.
Interesting. You see Holy Cross winning.
Yeah.
I have Southern winning this game. Holy Cross. Not that we should spend much time talking about either school, but Holy Cross just kind of put together a little run in their conference tournament. They lost more than they won this year. I don't see them doing anything. I have Oregon winning against Southern in the first round, but then losing in the second round.
I agree. Oregon, I feel like is a bit of an overrated school for basketball. But I do see them beating Southern or Holy Cross, whoever wins. But I don't see them lasting for long, and I might see them in the Sweet 16, but I don't think they're going to go in the Elite Eight.
Okay. Now, that brings us into St. Joseph's versus Cincinnati. In my eyes, I see St. Joseph's winning. And, that's all I have to say about that.
If we're going to say that Oregon is one of the most overrated schools for their seed, then I have to say that St. Joseph's is probably one of the most underrated teams in their seed. I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people and make a deep run in this tournament, knocking off Oregon in the second round to make it to the Sweet 16.
Completely agree. St. Joe's over the Bearcats.
Yeah, the Bearcats always bring a lot of size, a lot of strength, and a lot of talent to the basketball court. But St. Joseph's, again, they're very underrated this year. I think St. Joe's will win that. Then moving on to the Baylor-Yale game. Again, this is a no-brainer in my opinion. Yale comes from a very weak conference. Baylor comes from a very strong conference. I think Baylor moves on.
Okay, I agree.
I was thinking Baylor, but at the same time, I actually did see a bit of Baylor. They were good. And Yale was also good, but I feel like Yale might make a bit of an upset, like by a couple points and win, but I do see them getting blown out in the next round. And I do mean blown out. Not by you-know-who. Like, remember, it might be Duke. And by might be, I mean definitely. Now, that brings us to the next game. Speaking of Duke, wait, Reinaldo, you didn't say anything yet?
All right. Yep. Go ahead, Vin. Go ahead.
Duke versus UNC Wilmington. I definitely see Duke in this one. I don't have anything to say except for that.
Well, this is my bracket buster game. I think Duke will lose to UNC Wilmington. I think UNC Wilmington has nothing to lose in this game. They will come out and they will play well. If they shoot well and they defend, this is their game to lose.
I have Duke moving on from this one, but I don't see them going much further than that. I have Baylor knocking them off in the next round.
What about you, Reinaldo?
Okay. I see Duke winning it, and then going all the way down, all the way into the Final Four. That's what I see. That's my team going into the Final Four in the West.
Interesting.
But that moves us on to Texas and Northern Iowa, and I see Texas going through to the.
I have Northern Iowa with the upset here over a Texas team that tends to turn the ball over quite a bit. I think if Northern Iowa plays good defense, put some pressure on Texas's ball handlers, then I see the upset here for Northern Iowa.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, Matt. I think if Texas can protect the ball, they win the game. I think they will protect the ball. I see Texas moving on to the Sweet 16.
Okay.
I was going to say exactly the same thing that he just said. That means you, Mr. Crossan.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Now, Texas A&M versus Green Bay, and I'm not talking about the Packers.
I know nothing of Green Bay this year, so I went Texas A&M big.
Exactly. I mean, all I know Green Bay for is the Packers, and that's it. I mean, I definitely see Texas A&M and I see them against Texas to have a good old Texas college basketball match. That did not flow well at all.
Green Bay plays in a conference with teams like Western Michigan. It's a very competitive conference. I think it's an underrated conference. I think Green Bay will win this game, beat Texas A&M. It'll be a close game.
Next game, Oregon State versus VCU. And what does VCU stand for?
Virginia
Commonwealth University.
Ooh, Commonwealth. I actually see VCU winning against Oregon State. I mean, I just don't see it for Oregon State. I mean, and no, I do not see Oregon versus Oregon State in the final, in the Elite Eight. I just don't see it. I don't see an Oregon battle. I just don't. I see VCU moving on.
Besides Syracuse getting into the tournament, the biggest complaint I've heard about the bracket this year is Oregon State getting a 7 seed. I don't think that they're a great team this year. I think there's a lot of holes in their game, and I think VCU is another one of those schools that, maybe from a smaller market, but they always seem to put it together come tournament time. I think VCU wins this game.
Yeah, Matt, they're a very well-coached team. They do come from a small conference. Oregon State, are they Pac-10? They are Pac-10. Yeah, that's probably the reason why they got the 7 seed over VCU to 10, because they do come from a more elite conference per se. I like the way that the guy coaches at VCU. I think he will find a way to beat Oregon State.
What's VCU's mascot?
I do not know.
No, I think. Wait, is it the Horned Frogs? No, right? That's B.
I know
I think it's
VC.
the X-wing fighter.
Is it really?
I thought that VC.
Oh no! Oh,
Is it the Rams? Is it the Bighorns? What are they called?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
nah.
just-
Who's next there, Reinaldo?
I think we got Oklahoma and CSU Bakersfield. Oh, that's Cal State. Okay, then. So I'm gonna go with Oklahoma. There you go.
As is everyone else in America.
Yes, I agree with Reinaldo. We have a pretty one-sided game here. Oklahoma wins big.
I see this game being so one-sided that I actually see I possibly see this game going to I'd see this game having a 30-point win, basically. I actually might see that. And then I actually see Oklahoma. I mean, I know we're kind of like moving ahead, but I see Oklahoma actually making it to the Final Four. I feel like they're a good, very good team this year, and I see them beating A&M, and then Oklahoma will beat Duke, who originally beat Oregon. And I see Duke beating Oregon kind of badly.
Okay. Now, as a whole in the West, who do we see going to the Final Four?
I like Oklahoma coming out of the West. I think they're the strongest team in the West. I think they are one of the strongest teams in the entire conference and the entire tournament this year.
I guess we're all in agreement. Oklahoma coming out of the West.
I say Duke. I think Coach K is gonna bring back Duke. And they're gonna win the college basketball tournament. That's my prediction. All right,
Right
and I'm sticking to it.
Good for you. I actually see Kansas winning the national championship versus Virginia, actually. I see Virginia. I actually see Virginia. I don't know if this would be considered an upset or not against Kentucky. Would you call it an upset when Virginia beats Kentucky in the Final Four?
Virginia cannot play Kentucky, actually, in the final game, but I think that Virginia can beat Kentucky, and I'm actually taking Virginia to beat Kentucky. Okay.
So my Final Four, Kansas out of the South, Oklahoma out of the West, West Virginia out of the East, and Michigan State out of the Midwest. I have Kansas beating Oklahoma, Michigan State beating West Virginia, and Kansas beating Michigan State in the national championship game this year. I think this Kansas team they just have more talent than everybody, but they're also starting to gel at the right time. They haven't lost a game since January. I don't see anybody beating them in this tournament.
Well said.
Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our bracketology. Thank you, Mr. Crossan, Mr. Artigas, and Vin for coming down. Thank you. Let's do it again next year. I won't be here, but this is my last bracketology. But thank you guys for making it a special one, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Reinaldo, thanks for having me on the show the last couple of years. Appreciate it.
That's Reinaldo signing off.
Ronaldo signing off. Thank you.